Hi, everybody. Welcome to your Pac-12 Hoops preview, along with the former Stanford point guard, Drew Schiller, Roxy Bernstein with you. And glad you're with us for another edition. It's getting down to crunch time in the conference. A lot of teams are still in the race for the regular season championship of the Pac-12 Conference. Last week, we saw some exceptional performances, but Kyle Fogg, Drew, is your Pac-12 Player of the Week.
Last week, we talked about how Arizona needed one of their guards to step up, and Kyle Fogg, a senior for that team, gets his first ever Pac-12 Player of the Week recognition. He had 23 points against Cal and also hit a big three late in that game. He defended Alan Crabb great, forced him to 4 for 12 from the field. And then against Stanford, just 14 points, but really gave Chasen Randall, Stanford's freshman guard, some fits. He was 4 for 16 from the field. And last week when we gave away our Defensive Player of the Year honors, we were remiss and forgot to mention Kyle Fogg. Shame on us for that. So Kyle, we apologize. It will not happen again.
In addition to Fogg's exceptional performance, Arizona with a critical road sweep in the Bay Area, Washington with a home sweep, and same with Colorado as they're putting some pressure on the top of the league.
Well, for Washington, it wouldn't have happened if they didn't have a huge comeback against UCLA, down by 10 with just under 6 minutes to go. And then it was the Terrence Ross show from there on out. 10 of Washington's final 12 points down the stretch. He had 22 for the game, 18 in the second half, and then Washington came back and beat USC. And then Colorado against Oregon State, entering that game, the Beavers were averaging 81 points per game in league, leading the conference. To hold them to 60 is a remarkable feat. Ahmad Starks and Jared Cunningham combined 6 for 20 from the field. And then on Saturday against Oregon, the game that came down to the last second, the foul, when Nate Tomlinson was able to go to the free throw line and knock down the big free throw. And in that game, we talked about free throws were going to be very important down the stretch. Oregon was 10 for 17 from the free throw line, and Colorado was 23 for 30. So it turned out that the free throws, and specifically Nate Tomlinson, is what won the game for Colorado.
Well, speaking of Colorado, they have a big road test in Tucson against the Arizona Wildcats coming up Thursday night. Tip time, 7 o'clock Mountain Time, 6 Pacific, on ESPN. Colorado at Arizona. We know the Buffs can win at home. They need to prove they can win on the road, and they take on a hot Arizona team.
Well, they're 7-0 at home, Colorado, and just 1-3 on the road in conference play. In the first meeting between these two teams, Colorado got a nice win at home by 1 point. Jesse Perry for Arizona had a huge game, 20 points and 10 rebounds, and Andre Robertson of Colorado did not score, only had 7 rebounds. He leads the league in rebounding, so that's kind of the key matchup up front. And in the backcourt, we talked about it before, Kyle Fogg, he had 16 points in that game, but Carlin Brown, Colorado's best perimeter scorer, had 19 points. So that's the key matchup in the backcourt there.
Also coming up Thursday night, a heated rivalry game in Eugene as Washington visits Oregon. 8 o'clock tip from Matthew Knight Arena on FSN. And a big showdown. Look, the Huskies have won 5 straight, and if Oregon is going to make a surge in the conference, they need to win this game.
Well, and Washington's also won 3 in a row on the road. Oregon, of course, coming off that very disappointing loss at Colorado by 1 point late in the game. The Huskies won the first meeting in Seattle against Oregon because of their defense. Oregon shot just 32% from the field. They were 5 for 23 from the three-point line. DeVoe Joseph, which is 1 for 13 from the game. However, in that game, the one thing that Washington did not do well was shoot their free throws. They were just 6 for 13. And on the season right now in conference play, they're at 61%, which is 11th best in the league. It's somewhat surprising that they're ahead in the conference race right now, despite the fact they have not shot the ball well from the free throw line. So I'm not saying it will come back to haunt them, but it could if they don't figure that out.
Also coming up at 8 o'clock on Thursday night from L.A., Stanford against UCLA. Drew, both teams are at 6-5 in conference play and desperately need to get this game at the LA Sports Arena.
Well, Stanford knocked off UCLA to open up conference play, thanks in large part to a huge block shot from Josh Huestis late in that game. Zeke Jones had a career-high 26 points against the Cardinal, and Josh Smith, as I think really an intriguing figure in that meeting with Stanford. He just had 10 points in the first game, and he was battling foul trouble, but he's playing the best basketball of his career. A game at Washington last week, a career-high 24 points to go along with 9 rebounds. And then at Washington State, he had 19 points in just 22 minutes. So Stanford's going to have their hands full with the big guy in the middle.
You're part of Stanford's broadcast team. What does Stanford need to do to get things turned back around?
Well, against Arizona, they just simply couldn't make anything from the outside. They could not throw the ball in the ocean. 25% from the field. But for Stanford, it comes down to defense for them. You know, through the first 15, 16 games of the year, Stanford was leading the conference in scoring defense. They were holding teams to low field goal percentages, but that kind of has gone away from the Cardinals. They really need to figure that out against a UCLA team that really should have knocked off Washington last week and got a nice road win at Washington State. So the Bruins are playing good basketball, and they have not lost at home in conference play.
Then a turnaround for UCLA as they'll host Cal at 1 o'clock at the LA Sports Arena on Saturday. And again, here's a critical matchup with teams that are fighting near the top of the conference. And California's already got a good road win in Seattle. Could really use another one here at UCLA.
Well, Cal is trying to keep pace with the Huskies, and UCLA still has dreams of kind of getting into that upper echelon of the conference. It's so important to finish in the top 4 so you get a bye in the first round of the Pac-12 tournament. In the first meeting between these two teams, Cal shot 65% from the field and had 28 assists on their 34 baskets. 6 guys in double figures. The one bright spot in that game for UCLA was Tyler Lamb. He had a career high 26 points. But as you said, this is a huge game between rivals, the UC schools in the state of California. So we'll see if Cal can go on the road and get a nice win at UCLA, despite the fact that they kind of slipped up at home and lost to Arizona.
And then Sunday at 2:30, FSN national broadcast as Oregon State hosts Washington in Corvallis. A game where Oregon State back at home after a tough road trip. The Huskies on a roll. A long trip to the state of Oregon for the Huskies as they try to knock off Oregon State.
Well, if you're Washington, this is an extremely important road trip. It's a very difficult swing when you have to go to Oregon and then Oregon State. If you're the Huskies, if you can just get a split on this trip, I think it's a success for Lorenzo Romar and his team. In the first meeting between these two teams, Washington 95, Oregon State 80. You know this is going to be a high-scoring game, especially with the way that Oregon State plays at home. Oregon State leads the conference in scoring, Washington third in scoring. Washington had 6 guys in double figures in that first game. So, look for a game in the 80s, possibly in the 90s when these two teams meet.
Well, that'll wrap up another edition of Pac-12 Hoops. So for Drew Schiller, Roxy Bernstein, thanking you for tuning in. We'll see you right here next week for another installment of Pac-12 Basketball.